Hello there, and welcome to the tour of the starter class Shuttlepod, the first vehicle in my Wimpomania line of vehicles. My name is Wimpoman, and I am the chief designer, chief builder, chief architect, and chief dumbass behind the starter class Shuttlepod update project. So here is the updated starter class Shuttlepod. Now, as I said, it's updated, so I'm first going to start this tour with the original vehicle. Right, and this is not it. So, in order to show you the original vehicle, I need to Alt-Tab. There it is. So, the original starter class shuttle pod. I don't know if it was a shuttle pod back then, but I mean it should have been. So this is the Mark 1 starter class. It was built in a game called StarMade, and anyone who has ever called Empyrion or any other game Minecraft in space simply hasn't played StarMade because look at it. So there's a little bit of a story here, and it would explain the name. So I was planning to host a server where this would be the ship that everyone is given to start with. Now, at the time that I played this, I did actually mention in the tour of the Commando that we didn't have slopes at the point I played it. I actually think they came into the game maybe like a week after we started playing or something like that. So the slopes and these corners, but whatever. So at the time that we started playing, you spawned in your spacesuit in space, and I think you were given a bunch of blocks to begin with. I think I don't know what the exact numbers were, but I think it was something like 10 thruster blocks and 10 power blocks, 10 or 15 or something hull blocks. And you just sort of and a core block and I think a camera block, and I think you had to just throw together anything to get you going. And so I thought it would be nice to host a server where, I mean, I would have to spawn it in with an admin command, but you know, whatever. So this is the ship that I was going to give to everyone, and so this kind of it looks like it's been on fire. But it's supposed to be like a worn texture, damage. Like this isn't a new ship; it's second hand. You know, it's been through the wars a little bit. That was the idea. So actually, if we go back through these images, we can see how it's made. I saved these so that I could see how it was built. Now this is the important bit. These blocks here with the green on them are actually a mining laser block. So the way everything in StarMade works is, and here you can see thruster blocks. So everything is a block. So a thruster, a weapon, a power generator, a shield. It's a 1 by 1 by 1 block. However, you could chain them together to make them better. So as you can see, these thrusters are 3 blocks long, or this bit is. When you then add it to the next layer up, there's more. And then these were power and these were batteries, I think. So the more blocks of the same type you chain together, the better the performance of that thing. So the more power blocks you have, the better your power generation. So you get your blocks in your inventory to throw something together. And then I think you had a handheld mining tool. You had to go to an asteroid, mine blocks off the asteroid in order to then get resources to build something bigger. But I thought it would be nice to have the starter ship, which is why it's called the starter class, with a little mining laser. Now this is, so that's 16 blocks. Yeah. Now that isn't particularly powerful, but it was certainly better than obviously 1 block or 10 or 15. And it's certainly better than the little hand tool. So that is the story behind the Mark 1. And you can also see this is a turret dock. So you would build another ship that had a weapon on it and an AI core, and then you told the AI core you are in a turret. You then docked it to that I'm pointing at there, and it would then act as a turret and would move around on docked still to your ship, which was kind of cool, but it also looked a bit weird, you know, because it would be sticking up in the air sometimes depending on what it's shooting at. So there's the Mark 1. Now unfortunately I can't show you the Mark 2 because I didn't keep any images of it and I didn't keep its blueprint, but the Mark 2 starter class was built in Space Engineers, and I built it 1 for 1, so every one block in StarMade became 1 block in Space Engineers. Now in StarMade these blocks are 1 meter cubed, whereas in Space Engineers and obviously Empyrion they are ½ meter cubed. So the Mark II and the Mark III are all 1/8 the actual size of the original, but that's okay. So yeah, it was built in Space Engineers, and then we moved to Empyrion. And this is where we come to the Mark III. And this was the Mark III, and again it was supposed to be a starter ship. Again, so I liked the name Starter. I grew fond of the name Starter class, so I kept it. And yeah, so this was going to be a starter ship in Empyrion. Now, this was built before the game, like I said, was fully released, so there are some things we didn't have, although on a starter ship it doesn't really matter. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if we had any medium thrusters in the game at the time, because quite a lot of my builds don't have any medium thrusters. At least the ones that were built, like I said, before the game was released. You'll also notice the blue. I never particularly liked the blue, and actually I repainted it. It was originally painted in Empyrion in this blue. Hang on, that's not what I meant to do, but it was close. So it was originally that. Then they introduced or updated, I can't remember which, the mobile constructor, which then led me to build the survival and defense series, and I used this blue for that because it was the closest blue to the blue that the old survival constructor used to be, and that meant that I decided, and I regret it now, but I decided that I would, instead of using the same blue for 2 different series of vehicles, that I would change it to this blue. And although it's a nice blue independent of the vehicle, for whatever reason the vehicle just does not look good in that blue. Yeah, which is kind of a shame. So then we come on to the update. So like I said, that was before the game was released. I've said it like 16 times now, so it needed to be updated, and here we go. So that's the end of that segment. The next segment is going to be its role and its task equipment. So its role is a 2-person snub shuttlecraft, very short-range transport, and to facilitate that task, it has 2 seats for the two people it's supposed to transport around, and some thrusters to push them around. I suppose you could say that the whole vehicle is really what it uses, but, you know, whatever. That's the end of that segment. So the next segment then is going to be its propulsion, handling, and lift capacity. Okay. First, actually, I'm going to point out the differences between the Mark III. So this is now the Mark IIIA. It was just 3, but now it's 3A. That's now the 3B, shall we say. As you can see, the only reverse thruster was 1 small on top, and then sideways was 1 small on each side. Forward was actually 2 smalls, one in front of the other. The other one is... Oh no, there was 3 smalls. That's a small pointing backwards as well. There you go. Now there is... Yeah, you can just about make it out there. So it was 3 smalls on each side pushing forward, so 6 in total. And then lift was only these 3, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And then downward was just 1. So it wasn't particularly manoeuvrable or agile, although of course it was before thrusters were able to pitch, roll and yaw, so there's actually quite a few RCSs in here. 3 I think, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. So this is the new one, and we'll start with forward. 2 medium tier 1s for forward, 2 medium tier 1s for reverse. Lateral, we have 1 medium tier 1 and 1 small on each side. Descent is 4 smalls. And then lift or ascent is 2 medium tier 1s and 2 small tier 1s. It also has 1 RCS just there. Right, now that's... Actually, no, I need to leave it on, don't I? Okay, so its mobility, starting with its manoeuvrability. So it'll accelerate forwards at 35 meters per second square. Reverse is obviously the same thrusters. Laterally, 25 meters per second squared. Descent is 31 and ascent is 51. For its agility, it has 72 degrees per second yaw, 74 pitch, and 62 of roll. Now I'm going to turn that off because that's an annoying thing. I'm not going to bother showing you an example of its flight because, you know, those numbers are fairly decent-ish. Right, that's the end of... Oh, no, lift capacity. Aye, so... According to the maths, and I've checked multiple times in 2 different ways, my maths and Google Maths, it will operate in 6G. But it's not recommended, because it will actually... the cut-off point is 6.2G. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. In 4G, it will lift 15 tons. The vehicle itself is 9.7, so just under 10. Right, now it's the end of the segment, so the next segment is its power, fuel and air. Like always with my tours, I'm going to tell you about this stuff now and then show you where they are during the interior bit. So, power is 1 small power generator. Fuel, 6 large and 1 small fuel tanks. O2, 3 O2 tanks and 1 ventilator. And it isn't compartmentalized, it only has 1 compartment, and that is the cockpit. Right, so I'm still waiting for it to fall onto the ground. Right, so the next segment then is its weapons, defenses and construction. This is going to be a quick segment. Weapons, it has none, so unlike the Mark I, it doesn't come with a turret. Defenses, it has none, doesn't have a shield and it's not armoured. Oh, except for there is 1 block of lag shot armour in front of the core, behind the core, and you also just saw where the core is. Construction, here we go, unpainted version. It's basically all steel apart from little bits of fluff that aren't. Shush. So that's carbon, and so is that. And actually, behind this stuff at the back of the cockpit, let's see if we can actually see it. There we go. So the bulkhead behind the cockpit is also carbon composite. I'm so glad I turned signals off on this one. Right, so that's the end of that segment. So the next segment then is its resource gathering, production and storage. Again, this is going to be a quick one. Resource gathering, it has none. Production, it has none. Storage, 1 large cargo box, 1 small cargo box, 1 mini fridge, 1 armor locker. That's the end of that segment. So the next segment then is its interior layout and any remaining devices. Right, I've put it back on the floor. So let's talk about its remaining devices before we go inside. Detector is there. It is unfortunately targetable and it has no protection, but it's not a combat ship, so I'm not too worried. Right, so as usual, this is flight regulation lighting compliant. So you can see the slow flashing running lights there. There's one on top and then one on each side. They are on automatically so long as the ship is powered, so that any observer can see that it is powered. That includes you, obviously, if you've parked it on, you know, the deck of your ship or in the hangar bay. You can tell from across the hangar bay that you've accidentally left it on. So, navigation lights. So, as usual, we have a red one on the port, a white one on the stern, and a green one on the starboard. Now, these illuminated orientation panels are the formation lights. So, there's red again on the port, white again on the stern, and green again on the starboard. However, there is also yellow on the ventral, the bottom. Yeah, so anti-collision lights then. So it has some anti-collision beacons that come on automatically with the thrusters. There's a red one on the top and a yellow one on the bottom. Actually, there's also another red one on the back. So at this point in the future, so currently NASA has yellow formation lights on the ventral. I've decided that would become would become the ventral anti-collision beacon rather than having red on both top and bottom. I decided to make the yellow one flashy as well. The flight strobes, which are also considered anti-collision lights, are the bright white flashing lights you see on the ends of the wingtips of planes. There's one on the left and one on the right. And the nav lights are controlled by a signal. Manually, I mean. Okay, let's turn the signals, speaking of signals, on. As you can tell, noisy. The ramps, the doors, and a ground light are controlled by the sensor next to the door. Oh, I should talk about the registry displays. So this one at the front, there's one on each side, is supposed to be an incremental counter of how many starter classes there are. Of course, there isn't any way really of knowing. So if you are the 10th person to subscribe to it, you could sort of assume that you have the 11th, because obviously mine is the first and I'm not counted on the workshop page as the first subscriber. However, for all you know, the 9 people in front of you might have somewhere between 2 and 20 of them each, so it's hard to tell, but the idea is that you change the number symbols to be the number of which your shuttlecraft is. Of course, if you have 10, then they would increment by 1 each as well. Whatever. There is one on the top of the back as well. Now, this is supposed to be the registry, or that bit is the registry of the mothership, the ship that this is attached to, that is being carried around by. And then this one is how many of your attached crafts to that ship this one is. So if you've got a full-size shuttle and a light fighter, and then you spawn this one in, then this would be the 3rd on that ship, you know, that kind of shit. Of course, as I always say, It doesn't matter at all what you do with this. No one's going to know if you put anything else there, or even care if you do. So you can remove that or ignore it and just leave it like that. You can multi-tool up the projectors, or you could put some number there that means something to you, your date of birth, your house number. Aye, so that's that. Oh, and landing gear. We have 3. Actually, a little bit like the original. And you may have seen in the pictures, have I still got it open? Yes. Do I show the landing gear on this? No, I don't. So this had 3 as well, and it was just blocks. And it just sat on the blocks. Okay, so let's go in to the side that's lit. So pilot seat's on the right because he's British in it. Passenger seat there. The projector for that HUD is there. And then as you can see, there's some stuff at the back. O2 station with a vent. Armour locker. There's the small and large cargo boxes. And there's the mini fridge. Now, let's go into the gubbins inside, in through the bulkhead wall thing. There's the RCS. There's some of the fuel. And there's some of the O2. I've forgotten something. And there's the wireless. Okay. On the back, above the detector, is a ramp that acts as a shutter. And in through here, you have manual access to a fuel tank, an O2 tank, and in case you need to repair it, the core block. And there is nothing else in here to show you. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the entire thing. Right, so that's the end of that segment. So the next segment then is going to be its shortcuts and signals. Oh, speaking of signals. Okay, this is going to be fairly quick. There's 2 device group shortcuts. The first is propulsion, etc. That'll turn on... Ooh. Oh, I did. Good. So, propulsion, etc. will turn on all of the thrusters. The one RCS is... The one RCS... and it'll also turn on the anti-collision beacons. The red one's there, and the yellow one on the bottom. The next one down is an air vent switch. Now, I'm going to cover this really quickly just in case you have seen other tours of mine before, but for those who haven't, if you turn the oxygen off and watch power left, that won't change because the air vent block actually stays on. So I've given you an air vent switch to turn the ventilator off so you can save some power in a breathable atmosphere. Moving on to the signals column. First we have power save. Doesn't do much on this vehicle because there isn't much to do. So it turns off the registry displays, the one on the sides and the one on top. It'll also turn off... yeah, I need to cover that as well. It'll also turn off the HUD. And it turns off the Wi-Fi. And that's it. That's all it controls. Oh, I should also mention, and it sort of fits because it's sort of a signal. The signal that controls the door and ramp is only operable from the outside. So from the outside coming in, it will be automatic. But when you want to go out, you have to manually open the door. But at least it closes behind you as well. My God, why are they so loud? Moan. Right. The next 2, nav lights and flight strobes. So if you want to look realistic, nav lights, as I showed you earlier, red, white, green, port, aft, starboard. And then flashy with the bright whites is the flight strobes. Ta-da. Okay, that's the end of that segment. So the next and last segment is its CPU and upgrading. This is going to be a quick segment. So it's tier 1 CPU. It only has the core block, and in case you're jumping around in the video, the core is up there in the back end. And its CPU usage is 3,425 out of the 6,000 you are allowed. So there is a bit more CPU to play with. However, there isn't an upgrade built. There isn't a built-in upgrade path, so there's no free slots earmarked for anything. However, that doesn't mean you can't personalize it. For example, if you are flying this solo, there is nothing to stop you from picking up the pilot seat, moving the LCD projector, or maybe putting a new one first, copying the HUD from it, moving it to there, pasting the HUD back on, ripping up that seat and putting the pilot seat in the middle. You could do that if you wanted. Right, I think that covers everything. Oh, no, I did think about this as well. So I've given you a little bit of information about what the registry number here is supposed to mean and how to change it. Like I said, feel free to ignore it or do whatever you like with it. Right, so there we go. That'll be the end of the tour of the starter class Shuttlepod. I hope you get some use out of it, and hopefully I will see you in another video for a different build. So thank you again, and goodbye.